The Tunisian army has been deployed to quell violent protests in several cities over adverse economic conditions. This came after police forces retreated following an attack by a group of protesters on a government building in the city of Thala. Over 300 protesters were arrested overnight. The demonstrators are angry over price and tax hikes and low pay. They say nothing has changed 7 years after former dictator Zain Al Abidine Ben Ali was overthrown amid a popular uprising. Tunisia has been ruled by 9 different administrations since then. Joining us live now from Cairo is Mr. Hazem Salem, who is a political commentator. Mr. Salem, thanks for joining us. Where do you think Tunisia has gone wrong vis-a-vis its economic conditions and the fact that the economy simply hasn't done well?
Well, the fact is, since 2011, there has been an attempt to recover the Tunisian economy and to curb on the corruption, which was a hallmark of the reign of Zain Al Abidine Ben Ali, who is currently in Saudi Arabia. And since that time, the situation has been in a turmoil, but with the ascendance of Sipsi to power, there has been more of a bringing of the Ben Ali state once again back to rule. And that made the situation of corruption go back to the situation before 2011. And the brutality of the police is one way or the other is restoring that momentum of the Ben Ali rule. That's why the unrest continues. But on the other side, the foreign countries are trying to abuse the current situation in order to pressure this government to give more interests and to give up more for the interests and for the intervention of the foreign forces in order to make it more bound to the American and the European allies. So the situation is tricky in that sense, and the possibility of restoring an economic recovery is not very high, and the possibility of curbing the corruption is not high, and the austerity measures have been made because the government failed to produce on the economic level. Maybe if there is free elections that brings some sort of a reformist government which is more into development, more into freedom and less into using the firm hand of police and army, maybe this can solve the situation of Tunisia.
Mr. Salem, as you well know, Tunisia was seen as the success story of what's called the Arab Spring or possibly even Islamic awakening. But that's in danger now, isn't it? Because as you correctly alluded to in your first answer, many people are critical of the fact that a lot of the old guard, a lot of the people who made up the old guard of the country, even under Ben Ali, are still in significant positions of power in the country.
That's true. Ben Ali is sort of still ruling, even if he's not in the country, but his party and one of the hallmarks of his country, Sipsi, are in power. But this is not a setback for the Nahda movement, because Nahda movement is not in power and it's not responsible for administrating the country, though it is partially part of the regime. But this might lead to another opening of the public sphere in the way that allows more democracy and more say of the street into the economic situation, into the political situation, but not using the firm hand that is actually being restored from the Ben Ali traditions. And the Ben Ali traditions are now ruling in a very flagrant way by suppressing the protesters. Still, the problem of this government continuing and making more austerity and more suppression of the uprising under the claim of combating terrorism and begging for aid from outside instead of reforming the structure of the Tunisian economy. That is the hazard that Tunisia is facing, and this is the situation where you can say that even the sort of partially successful story of Tunisia is now falling apart.
Okay, Mr. Salem, we'll leave it there at that, but of course, as always, we appreciate you sharing your insight with us.